Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Renee.
Good morning.
Good morning, all you sheet talkers. We are back. I hope everyone has had a great Christmas and an awesome start to your 2021. If you catch this on the replay, please mention that in the comments. I love to know that if you don't catch us live, you catch us on your time. So it would be awesome. So, some of you might recognize my guest today, Miss Renee. Welcome back. I'm so glad to have you back.
Hi. Well, I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad to talk murder with you.
I know, let's do this. But how was your Christmas? How was your New Year's? Was Santa good to you? Tell me all the goods.
Yeah, Santa gave me sweatpants that
Nice.
I'll never take off probably until it gets really warm. um, so yeah, Santa was really good. I think that was probably one of my favorite gifts, and I got a new purse. When you become a parent, Christmas is about the kids. So
Yeah. I had a really hard time trying to figure out what I wanted this year. And I'm just like used to, I was like, oh, get me an appliance and it's over. And now I'm
Mhm.
like, you know what? This appliance would really be good.
Yeah. And
Priorities change.
yeah, how was your Christmas?
My Christmas was good. Okay, so usually, it's like nonstop murder, but I gave it up for a little bit for Christmas because we do Christmas movie watching. But okay, so guys, listen, I need you to watch The Search, or in Spanish, it's La Buscas. Anyway, it's on Netflix. It's The Search, and it's a true crime that happened. Okay, it was really, really good. Yeah, morbid kind of way. But anyway, good morning, Dolores. Oh my goodness. How are you this morning?
Mom and
So yeah,
Dad.
so yes, I watched that, and then I started watching The Last Narc on Prime. It is so good. So, if you guys have watched that, y'all let me know in the comments. Good morning, Anita. Happy New Year's to you too. But anyway, so that's what I've been watching. I mean, Christmas was good. New Year's, okay. I was in bed by 10:30.
Oh my
Not even gonna
God.
lie. Yeah, it was like no, not even necessary. Hey, good morning, Mr. Eric. How are you doing?
I know that guy.
All right. Do we know him? Does he go here?
He doesn't
So,
go
and
here.
and then you know what we did though? New Year's Eve, Cade was like, "Mom, we really need to watch this show. It's called Soul."
Oh yeah.
We watched Soul, and it was so good. And I can't tell you what that's on. Is it on Disney? Is it Pixar? I can't remember. Anyway, y'all need to watch it. It was so good. It's good for the soul. Good
It's
morning,
so good.
Rain.
I
Oh, did you guys
cried.
watch it?
Yeah, I cried. We had to. The kids were like, we gotta watch Soul. They kept pumping it to the kids, and
Yeah.
advertising it. And we watched it, and I honestly felt like it was a little over, like kid, like it was pretty deep.
Yeah, it was
But
really deep. This was like
mhm.
adult.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? Liberty, my oldest, she said, if I have met a spark mentor, I think that my mentor was Bob Ross, and I just got all
Oh, I
emotional. I
love
was like,
it.
I think so too.
Right. Yes, because she has some amazing paintings. And, I think it's like very fitting because she's one of those where I think she's like wise beyond her years. And like I mean, Liberty's amazing. Love her. Okay. So, Renee, let's do this
Okie
because
dokie.
you brought a topic to me. And I honestly never even heard of it.
Oh
I was
no.
10. I was 10 when this happened, and I
Hmm.
know that I was already unsolved mysteries on this. So, good
Yeah,
morning,
and
Gabs.
I think it was on Unsolved Mysteries at one point, like the original. But yeah, it's big news down here. So it's still every anniversary date they broadcast it on the news.
Do they? Oh my gosh. Good
Mhm.
morning, Shauna. And okay, Renee, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about you. Throw in a
Mhm.
plug or two if you need to, and
Sure.
then remind us why and when you became a crime junkie.
Okay, so my name is Renee, and I live down here in Austin, Texas, where the crime was committed. Uh, but I'm an Air Force brat, so I moved around a lot. But I lived many years of my life in Lubbock, and so I became a crime junkie in the 90s when Unsolved Mysteries. My mom was always watching that, so I had to watch that. And I went to law enforcement I got a law enforcement degree, and so it's really in depth as I watch things like that, trying to dissect a little bit of it. But I've always loved true murder mysteries and cold cases. But yeah, and so I have two girls, and I'm happily married to my husband forever,
Right. He is
and
stuck.
forever. And then let me see. I I left my job as a profession as a hairstylist right before the pandemic hit, and I'm so glad because everything shut down anyway. So it was
Right,
perfect
right.
timing. And since then, I've started selling Scentsy as an independent consultant, and I love it. It's perfect for me right now during the it's a pandemic jobs, and that's what's happening a lot. People are finding new avenues to make money
Yeah.
since their jobs have kind of dissolved away or have shortened because of the pandemic. So yeah, here I am. And then I met you through my
Yes,
friend
in this
Jamie, and
pandemic,
in
yes.
this pandemic, new friendships in the pandemic. And even though we never met in person, we laugh a lot.
I know, you and I are like good buds. We're good.
And it's all thanks to Jamie. Jamie and I went to high school together at Monterey, and we're in band together. And yeah, so here I am, and I love talking murder.
I love it. Well, good deal. So, guys, as always, remember viewer and listener discretion is advised. And unfortunately, this is a horrific case. And I don't plan to go on detail with it. And I'm not going to tell you the gruesome things. Renee, I'm not sure what you have planned for us, but this case remains unsolved. And it took place 30 years ago. And early 2020, it was in the media again, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. All right, Mr. Renee, you ready?
So ready.
Okay, let's do this. So, this case took place December the 6th, 1991. Okay, in Austin, Texas. Two girls, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison and 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, were working at I Can't Believe It's Yogurt. And for sister, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, and her 15-year-old, 13-year-old, sorry, Amy Ayers went up to a shop to get a ride home because they were all four going to have a sleepover. You know, just working the late shift at a yogurt shop, nothing fancy, nothing going on, right? So anyway, here we go. Between 10 and midnight, the girls were shot to death. Two of them were raped. Their bodies were piled strategically, and one had an ice cream scoop placed between their legs. And that was like really random. I don't understand that. Maybe in some of your schooling do you kind of get that? Does that like a sign or something? I don't get that.
I think it's just submission. I think it's just trying to overpower somebody as a symbol of authority and submission.
Yeah.
Who knows if that happened when she was still alive
Yeah.
or after she was deceased.
Yeah, so that was really strange for me. It was it's one of those where it always is like, what was the motive behind that? I try
Mhm.
to understand things like that. So
Mhm.
anyway, they placed that scoop between her legs. The killers would finish up the crime with stealing $540 from the register, but they left a bank bag behind, and then they set the yogurt shop on fire.
Mhm.
And this right here would be what would alert the police to this area. So there's a police officer that's on patrol, and he sees smoke coming out, and then he sees that it's the yogurt shop, so he calls in the fire department. Okay. So of course, firefighters rush to the scene, and they work quickly to put the fire out. And once the fire is extinguished, one of the firefighters goes inside, and he sees a foot sticking out of the doorway. And then they discover the girls. Amy was found separately. They assumed that she rolled off and tried to get out, and she died shortly after being found. So I read a couple of articles, and I heard a podcast on this, and it was kind of, they were talking sheep basically, kind of like I do. But one thing that I didn't understand is they were just kind of upset that at how this was handled. So they were like, well, the firefighters threw ungodly amount of water. I mean, they have to.
Right.
I mean, you have to do so much to extinguish the fire, they weren't thinking, oh, there's a crime scene that we have to preserve. They weren't thinking that. They thought it was just a dang kitchen fire. So anyway, I think it was in the podcast that I read or that I heard that they were like, I guess they were in there. It was so chaotic that they think that they even stepped on some of the bodies, which again, they're
Oh,
going in there just trying to put the fire out. They're not assuming that anyone is in there because it was after closing hours. So, again, now had it been during business hours, then I think it would have been maybe treated differently. Anyway, off my soapbox. They did the best that they could. I'm not going to criticize them for that. So, I think they said, and Renee, you might want to help me with this. Back in 91, what's the population now of Boston?
oh, goodness gravy. It's back in 1991, Austin was just a small town, really. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know the numbers, but it was literally just had a small town feel, and everybody in Austin felt safe.
Yeah.
Everybody, it was just a few high schools. The suburbs where I live were far away. Now we're all connected, kind of like
Yeah.
the Dallas Fort Worth area. But everybody, this was, from what I understand, the crime that that kind of escalated crime in Austin. This was some that where Austin lost its innocence, is what
Yes,
this
I
is
did read that too. And so another thing too, and of course we'll get to that, but this would be the first case of its type, okay?
Mhm.
So the police department had no experience in handling this type of case, and it would prove, you know, as we go on to it because of the evidence, the lack of evidence, the evidence that they threw away, and all that good stuff. So,
Mhm.
Detective Jones was the first one on the scene, and aside from the evidence destroyed by the fire, the water used to put out the fire, the several other mistakes that were made, the scene was not blocked off. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
I think, and of course, I'm not a detective because this is where I am talking sheet on this side, not over there. But that would be the first thing you cordon it off, right?
Mhm.
But it
Yep,
didn't.
exactly. No, no, they just everybody in there. And I think that part of it was a shock, like they put out this fire. It was a shock for the fire department. They don't expect really to see this back then. I mean,
Right.
nowadays, I'm sure. But then, you go into this yogurt shop, and where this is located in Austin is North Austin, which is not downtown. It's not South Austin, where most of the crimes, here in Austin take place. So
Mhm,
North
mhm.
Austin is considered the safe area of
Then
Austin.
this was like an affluent area, right?
Yes, and it's in a strip mall, and even today, it's not really. It's kind of shady now in that area, but it's still considered safer than downtown. And
Okay.
so I just think it was a shock factor for the police and the firefighters and the detectives when they got there. The DP, the Texas state troopers got involved because they're located here. I just feel like everybody was like, holy moly, like what?
Yeah.
And I don't think that procedures were in place at all. I just think that they were just probably walking around in shock, and
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happened. And then somebody was like, whoop, we need to, this is a, get out of here, we need to take
Yeah.
evidence.
Right. So, okay, so some of this, again, the scene wasn't blocked off. Items that could have been used to pull evidence were thrown out, and it would take DPS crime scene investigators about 4 hours to arrive. And in the meantime, you've got police officers, firefighters, paramedics. They would continue to walk all over the crime
Mhm,
scene.
mhm,
The crime scene investigators, though, they would soon be connected to a Daryl Croft and an elderly couple that had been in the shop prior to closing. And so they'd be connected to them as witnesses, okay, not as suspects or anything like that. So Daryl Croft came into the shop about 9:30 that evening, and he was with a few friends. He was a former military police officer, and he owned a security company. And the car he was driving resembled a police car, as it had, you've seen those little security in the mall. We saw one last night at Target. Anyway, so it looks like a police car, but it doesn't have like the same looking lights, or the same color lights as a police car. So anyway, he noticed that a customer inside the shop appeared agitated, and he said the agitated man had been telling other customers to go in front. Like he was being nice, but then at the point it was like way too nice. Like you're going to let everybody go in front of you. So anyway, Daryl said that the man approached him and asked him if he was a cop. And then he said, when Daryl's like, no, I'm not a cop. And then he said, well, you can go in front of me. And Daryl's like, no, that's okay, man. So he declines his offer, and the young man approaches the register, and all he does is he buys us a Coke. You're in a yogurt shop buying a Coke. So anyway, then he walks to the back of the store. So Daryl didn't have a good feeling about this young man. He just felt super uneasy about him. So when Daryl gets to the register, he places his order and he asks Eliza. He said, where did the guy go? Because he saw him walk to the back, and she's like, oh, he needed to use the restroom. And so Daryl waits for a little bit for the guy to come out, and he doesn't. And so Daryl ends up leaving. And I always think, I'm like, what if Daryl had stayed like the whole time? Would this have changed the outcome? I feel like it would have.
Oh, definitely.
If he'd wait, because he was onto something. He really felt like something was going to happen. If you feel uneasy, and of course he was also a military police officer, so he'd had those inklings. So anyway, like I said, Daryl ends up leaving. The older couple came in after Daryl had left, and they were able to give a description of two other young men that were in there as well. And they, like the other young man, appeared agitated. They were wearing like oversized coats. And the elderly couple said they were acting strange. The elderly lady said she felt uneasy and left shortly after. And this is all about 10:45. The shop was due to close at 11. So they walked in, paid for their stuff, looked around enough to see that everybody was just acting really weird that night. And so when I got to thinking, I'm like, man, how would I react, if I see little young ladies by themselves working, or would I just be so oblivious to it to where, like, would I leave? Would I want to stay? Would I suffer the same fate? I mean, there's just so many what ifs when I was reading this. You just kind of put yourself in that position. Like, would I have stayed to be an advocate? Would I have called to do a welfare check? I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, it's so sad knowing. I'm sure that is on their minds and hearts still to this day. If they would have done something or said
Yeah.
something or stayed, maybe this wouldn't have occurred, because my mama always telling me to check my, to trust my gut. And when my
Right.
gut says like this is not normal,
Right.
I'm gonna act, no matter if I'm nervous about it. I'm gonna stay there and act. And it's so easy for me to say, yeah, I was gonna stay there and protect those girls, but you just
Yeah.
never know. And it's so sad, and I'm sure they still have that to this day, this guilt of not being able to help those girls and
Yeah.
staying, especially the ex-police officer, military police officer. That's just so sad.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And so both of them, Daryl and the elderly lady, were able to provide what these guys look like. So anyway, Sarah and Amy arrived about 11, and the other girls locked the door after they came in. And they were the two men were still in the store when they locked up. So the policy for that little store was don't let anybody new come in, but let the people that are in there finish up. So that's what they were doing. And so, they closed their register as well, and no more cells. So some of the evidence that was collected was like a vaginal swab from two of the girls, and they found 5 hairs on their bodies. But at that time, I mean, they didn't have any leads or anything like that. So on December the 14th, show the picture of the shop. Maurice Pierce was picked up by the police for having a .22 caliber handgun tucked into his pants. Okay, so cue Maurice Pierce. And so you guys can have a look at, these are the girls right here. 17-year-olds, and then 15 and 13. The 13-year-old, obviously she was the youngest and she was the friend. But anyway, so they pick up Maurice Pierce, and he's got a .22 caliber handgun tucked into his pants. And so the detective that's going to interrogate him is Hector Palenko. And Maurice told Palenko that he had left his let his friend Forrest Welburn, who's 15, borrow the gun, and he's the one who murdered the girls. So you're like, okay, now we have something.
Mhm.
So then they pull in Forrest, and Forrest was questioned, and then he denied having anything to do with the murders. Forrest tells Palenko that he'd taken a trip to San Antonio in a stolen SUV.
I didn't do it, but I did commit another crime.
Right. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I really was doing that night.
Yeah. So don't get on to me that much.
Right. And guys, okay, so these guys are 16, 15. And then so Forrest tells Palenko, oh, I was with Robert Burns, who was 16, Michael Scott, who's 17 around the times of the murders. They give him a polygraph and he passes. And okay, here's something else that's really important. None of the evidence collected could be matched to the four boys, and they were dismissed as suspects. Okay. And this is right here is kind of where my mind is blown. There was over 50 false confessions in this case. They looked at over 340 suspects. And y'all, I don't understand why people want to confess to this. And it reminds me of old Henry Lee Lucas. But at least old Henry Lee was given milkshakes and steaks. But some of these fools came involuntarily. Like, I feel like you have to have some sort of mental health issue that makes you want to confess to this. I mean, why else would you want to confess to it? Notoriety? I mean, I feel like you have a mental health issue if you need that kind of attention. I read or on that podcast, I can't remember, there was even a couple that came in to confess about the case.
Right.
And you're just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, we could be using these resources to track people, but instead we're having to go through all these confessions. Anyway, and then they even went on to arrest a man in Mexico who confessed to the crime after being tortured by the Mexican police. And then he recanted.
They waterboarded him.
Yeah, I know. It was so crazy. I think they arrested two, and they did the same thing. And they both were like, yeah, we did it. Anyway, so after he's being tortured, he recants. And Palenko was suspected of trying to get people to confess, and they removed him from the case. Okay. Like, really, like, I get you want to bring closure to this family, but you can't bring closure to this family by making people confess to something that they didn't do. Like, that's not good police work. It's just not. And so they bring in Detective Johnson, and they did ballistics test on the gun that was found on Maurice against the bullets, and that they found on the scene, and they didn't match. And he still and the crazy part is he's still convinced that Maurice had something to do with the murders. So let's see. Hey, Kelly. So she's saying you should get in trouble for confessing when it wasn't you. And I agree. Like, I think this is one of those where you're tampering with evidence. I mean, surely that falls under that umbrella, right? I agree wholeheartedly.
It's like calling 911 or saying fire and nothing's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So will you show the pictures of the four guys? So then they bring in Michael Scott in 1999. And he's interrogated for 5 days. And I mean, that's a lot. Okay, so here's the guys. And Renee, I don't know if you know which ones are which.
Michael Scott, I believe, is the one with the really long hair and the beard, from what I understand.
Okay. And so anyway, so they bring him in, and he's interrogated for 5 days, and he ends up confessing to the murders, claiming Maurice made him shoot one of the girls. And the confessions, guys, if you want to hear him, they can be found on YouTube. And he's asked if he's seen this gun, if that's the gun that he used. And the guy's like, dude, this was like so long ago, and he's trying to get in there. So anyway, during the interrogation, they hold a gun up to Michael's head. And
and that just kills everything. That right there is just, and there was no lawyer present. There was no
lawyers. So Robert also confesses after being interrogated. But the crazy thing is, too, if you listen to these confessions, they have a lot of inaccuracies. So you can tell they were being fed things. And what is it I was trying to say? They're being fed things, and they're inaccurate. They're like, oh yeah, so this is what we did. I mean, just all a bunch of, again, same crap as Henry Lee Lucas. Okay. So all four were indicted. What is Carrie saying? Agree with Kelly. Maybe Sandy could get into this law. Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started on that. I've seen so many inaccuracies in a bunch of these things. But anyway, so all four were indicted, and then 2 grand juries failed to indict Forrest, and the charges were dropped. Michael and Robert recant the confessions, and they're saying they were manipulated into confessing, which, if you listen to those confessions, I mean, I think you would agree with them. So the defense, when this finally went to court, the defense was allowed to discuss 2 out of the 50 false confessions. They were not allowed to bring up the possibility that the serial killer, and then we'll show his picture of this serial killer right here. He's probably a future episode. Kenneth
Yes,
McDuff.
he's a future episode.
Definitely. Kenneth McDuff might have been responsible. And then so the reason that this guy comes into play because they found a map in his car and it had directions within 3 miles of the shop. And 23 days after the murder, McDuff and an accomplice kidnapped and murdered Colleen Reed. And some witnesses did claim to have seen McDuff at the mall that night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he, like, his confession's crazy as well. He's like, yeah, just like, what? Yeah, I killed them. And he was trying to, I guess, extend his death penalty.
And I think that's why he confessed to it. And there was a couple of inaccuracies when I was reading this too, because some said, well, if I'd have done it, I'd have told you. Okay. Yeah. Well, you told us that you did, and they still executed you. So there's that. So we'll never know, right? And listen to this crazy thing. So McDuff had been in prison, but then he got paroled due to overcrowding. He started killing and raping immediately after his release. And so anyway,
can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah, honestly, seriously. And anyway, after he was executed, they did test the evidence that they had against his, and it wasn't linked to him anyway. So they don't think that it was him. So fast forward to 2008. I'm not good with math. How many years has it been? From 91 to 2008. They come up with this. Yeah, me either. Oh, Eric says 17 years. Thank you very much, Eric.
Even in the documentary I read, it says later in 2008. Yeah. Whoever wrote what I read didn't even want to do the math.
Yeah, just figure it out, people. So in March of 2008, they have this new DNA technology, which is called the YSTR or the Y strand, and it's found in males only, and it's shared by fathers, sons, and uncles in the family. And this DNA that was pulled off the young girls that were raped did not match Maurice, Michael, Robert, or Forrest, or any of the males in their family. So I feel like we should stop beating a dead horse, right? Should we? What do y'all think? I don't know. It's just too much. So anyway, the prosecutors, they tested. Do you remember the ungodly number? Do you remember that?
I don't remember the number, but it was a lot. And especially for back then, they didn't have the technology that they do now in the 2000s, where that took a long time, to test everybody and get all that information.
Like they went as far as to get a yearbook and test classmates. Mm-hmm. I mean, that knew these girls, because these girls were really well-liked. They were all involved in FFA. They were good girls. They don't really have anything negative. And of course, sometimes after you pass, they don't really, not a whole lot of people have a whole lot of negative things to say about you. But anyway, these girls, by all appearances, seem to be good girls. So anyway, all this is happening, all this DNA being tested, all this stuff being tested, while Robert and Michael are still pending trial. Okay. And nothing is matched. We've already said that. Nothing matches. They're like, we didn't do it, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, fast forward to 2017. Add some more years to that. Oh, what does Carrie say? Thank you, Minnie, for calculating for us. She said 17 years.
Thank you.
She said, but did the yearbook have them scratched out with marker?
Or circled with hearts?
Yes, circled with or hearts. No. So in 2017, the Y strand was entered into a database that was run by the University of Central Florida. And guess what? They got a match. Mm-hmm. They got a match. And it was the break that they were looking for, that they've been hoping for since 1991. So they sent a subpoena. So the subpoena they sent to the university to obtain the match. Okay, ready for this? It turns out that the FBI had submitted the matching DNA. So Austin PD is like, yes, it's the FBI. They're going to help us. Let's schedule a conference call. And then they find out that the DNA was submitted for testing only, and federal law protects the identity of the donors.
Mhm.
And it's like we're starting back. Okay. So let's dissect this just a little bit. So this DNA sample matches in that Y strand database. So if you're not going to let us look at it, then why do you even have this database? I don't understand. So
Mhm.
if you have a potential match, you're telling me that this law overrides the solving a crime? I don't know.
It,
Renee, I,
it's so messed up. It's even like the district attorney at the time, and I remember this was huge. This happened after we had moved to Austin. This was huge news here, and it was like the top story every time. And the district attorney, Rosemary Lindbergh, she even said, even though I believe that these boys have done it and that there's another unidentified suspect that's been identified, they can't move forward. They can't, like it's just a mess, really. And um, she believes that they were responsible from what it says here, but the mid would not. They can't re-prosecute them. It's just terrible.
so wait. She believes that it matches the four guys.
No, she believes that the two that were convicted, Springsteen and Scott, were involved, and that there
Uh-huh.
was another unidentified male, but they can't move forward because since the evidence was found, they can't. Since the FBI won't release the identity, she said that with that Y strain, it could be thousands of men in the same family,
Right.
and so even authorities still believe that they had caught the right guys, but this is just a weird like loophole in the system, a
Yeah.
weird, like, I don't know, unjust reason for this. And that way, and then the lawyers for these two guys were like, they jumped on it. They just were like, hey, we have this, there's another guy that we can't identify, so we're going to say you guys weren't there.
Yeah. I don't know. So this was argued most recently in February of 2020, and they want to subpoena, but they are talking about it would cost so much money to do all of this. So you're basically submitting a subpoena from or to the FBI, and so that's really costly. And so here's the deal. Familial DNA has been used in lots of cases more recently and more famously, if you guys keep up with this like I do. The Golden State Killer um, was one of those that was caught because of the familial DNA. And so I feel like if they would release this, of course, you know what? And then this was another thing too. What if that familial DNA, what if it was like a law enforcement person? It's not saying that necessarily it's them, but it's their family, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so are they trying to protect?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. All I know is that I did my ancestry on this one, and so my future serial killers trying to down the line, y'all are screwed. Like y'all are getting caught. There
Right.
is no and ifs or whatever. What's the other word? And ifs or buts about
Right.
it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's in there. So anyway, guys, this case so far remains unsolved, I feel sorry for this family. Honestly, it's like one of those where like the answer is so close, yet so far. Like you're right there. But like you said, Renee, they would have to test because it goes down the male line. They would have to test several other people, I guess. But I feel like you'd still narrowed it down to
Mm-hmm.
a little patch, a little
Right.
big
Like,
patch.
what's the holdup? If this is the justice system, why aren't they trying to bring justice to these girls and to these families by saying, okay, well, we have this, and all y'all that match this DNA Y strand, let's just go ahead and get a sample, and if you're innocent, you're innocent. Like it, I don't understand it, but maybe futurely, down on the line, it'll come out, and but these parents that are still surviving of this, I just saw a recent interview of this last year, and one of the moms was like, "I'm already in my mid 60s. I don't have much longer. I don't know if this will ever be solved in my lifetime."
Yeah.
And that's just terrible. It's just
It's
terrible.
heartbreaking. They've spent so much money. They have all these billboards. Have you seen any of the billboards recently? I know that when I was looking, I saw like, some of the older billboards that they had put out originally, but I don't
Um, you
know.
know, there were billboards, but for another probably show of a mystery case that was done here in the Round Rock area. And that was the big murder mystery of that time when I first moved here in the early 2000s.
Oh,
Um,
really?
but no, I don't see them. But the funny thing is, every anniversary of this murder, there's always a segment in all the new awesome news channels about this murder, and still trying to get anybody to come forward with new evidence. And apparently, even to this day, people have come forward with either new evidence or statements. And I don't know if it's because years have passed and they feel a little bit braver or remorse, or if it's just bogus.
Yeah.
We don't know, but it's still an open case. And here in Austin, um, there was many news broadcasts for hour-long segments, and
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to touch on the court of the release of the two suspects that
Yeah, go for
from
it,
prison.
definitely. So Minnie's asking, yeah, so this is still unsolved.
Mhm.
They have the Y strand does match somebody in the database, but that's all that they know, that it does match somebody. But because of that federal law, yeah. Go for it, Renee. Let's talk about that.
So because of that, the district attorney didn't see fit to keep those two suspects in prison any longer. So I remember, especially where I was when that day happened, when they were released. It was
Hmm.
breaking news. Like the Austin News has broke through, and it was a big ordeal. There was nothing I could watch. It's like when the president speaks, there's
Yeah.
nothing else you
Yeah.
can watch. And they came through and they showed these suspects leaving the courtroom and hugging their families and moving on. And one of them still lives here in Austin.
Uh-huh.
And it's just crazy. And another suspect that was released earlier was killed by an awesome police officer. He was shot at a traffic stop because he pulled a knife on
Yes.
the police. And I'm thinking, if that doesn't say something about his character,
Yeah.
then I don't know what does. And even though he's deceased, the fact that he was out and about in the public and willing to stab somebody
Yeah, he
over.
stabbed that police and then he
Mhm.
got shot and
And
killed. Yeah.
yeah, I forget his name, but that was big
Maurice.
news too. They were
That was
just
that
like,
Maurice one.
when that happened, they're like, there was an officer involved shooting, but guess who got shot? It's so weird how like it just keeps evolving even years later here in Austin, and you you just don't know what to believe anymore. Like, do you believe in the justice system when stuff like this happens? Do you have faith in our justice system?
Well,
And
'cause I mean, it
mhm,
does make you question everything from that guy trying to get false confessions, from the evidence that was collected. And of course, you look back at all these cases that we've kind of talked about on this show, and you do see that there was some shoddy work in some of them. And I'm not knocking the police or anything like that. But, back then, it wasn't. It was really hard to collect because this, like you said earlier, this caught you off guard. Like you weren't expecting anything like this.
mhm.
And Carrie is saying, I guess I don't understand why it wouldn't be pretty easy to narrow down to a very small group, the Y-stranders who were at the yogurt shop. So here's the deal. Though it didn't match the guys at the yogurt shop. The strand matched the DNA that they had swabbed from the girls, but they had already is that am I saying that right now? I'm like second guessing myself. Yeah. So the
No,
Y
right.
strand was from the DNA swab from the girls. So, it wasn't from these 4 guys here. Um, Maurice Pierce, out of these 4 that were arrested on this, he's dead now. He stabbed a police officer in the neck and then was shot on the scene. And so I
The
think
officer survived. The officer survived. I will
yes,
say that the
he did.
officer
He
did
did.
survive. Mhm.
But so the strand is from the evidence collected from the girls. that match someone in that database that the university is holding, but the strand matches something that the FBI had submitted. So it's kind of complicated, and I'm horrible at explaining things, but yes. So that's where the strand is. But
And the guys have never said that there was a fifth person involved. They have always
right,
said there was four, and for a fifth DNA to show up kind of confuses everybody. Like, why is this DNA here? Are they covering for somebody that was there? Or like, is it one of those things? If you tell them I was there, I'm going to kill your family. Like it's where did this fifth DNA come from? And it's just it's so upsetting because like, what did these girls? Was this fifth person somebody that's not involved with the case at all? Was it
right.
just and then I never saw, Sandy, and correct me if you saw this, what kind of DNA, like, was it semen? Was it like,
Well, I
what
mean,
was that?
I'm assuming when it's a vaginal swab, I'm assuming that it was semen, but all it said was vaginal swab, and then it did say like they found 5 hairs that didn't belong to them. But that's all I've seen as far as evidence goes. I don't know if there was anything else out there that was discovered maybe later on. But like, we talked about early on, a lot of evidence was destroyed. They didn't pull fingerprints where they should have pulled fingerprints. And two, the water destroyed a bunch of things. I mean, there was just so many things that are going against this case, and that I feel like aren't going to be solved. That
Mhm.
I don't want to be gloom and doom, but at this point, we're so advanced with DNA. Like, how are we not going about this a different way?
Right. It makes me so sad knowing about how this happened, and that the front door was still locked when police and firefighters arrived. So the gentleman suspectedly went out the back door, and the fire was so intense because these criminals used napkins and anything flammable, and then they put gasoline on top of them to enact the fire. And so that always blows my mind that they took the time to go out to their vehicle or have it on them and have gasoline to ignite this fire. They had already it's like they premeditated this.
Oh yeah.
And then somebody, I think it was my husband, asked, like, why, if were they there just to rob the girls? Like, this is a big deal. Like, if they were there just for money, what happened? And one of the theories I saw is one of the girls knew the suspects. So the suspects, that they're gonna call us out if we rob them. So we gotta kill them. And the fact that two of the girls were sexually assaulted, they did horrible things, and I'm not going to say that on here, but
Right.
to these girls. But the fact that they used gasoline lets you know that somebody thought this out. And another thing that blows my mind is this happened within an hour's time before the
Right.
fire was noticed. And of course, the fire department, where this is located in Austin, is a strip mall, and so there's other shops connected to it. And so of course they were trying to get this out to save the other shops, not
Right.
knowing, you
Right.
know, they're just doing their job as firemen, not knowing that this is a crime scene. And it's just, and that's what it is now. It's a nail salon. This is a picture that was taken a couple of months ago, so it's still there. And I don't know if I would open up any business in that location if I.
Yeah, and I was wondering, like, what's the turnaround at this area? Does this stay for very long? And kind of to touch on what you were saying, Renee. So that picture that we just showed, that was the whole little shop, and the girls were placed strategically. Sorry, Renee. We're just gonna go through everything that's on here. Um, so one of the girls, and it was Amy, managed to try to roll off. They piled the bodies up, and then one of them rolled off, which is Amy, I guess, trying to get some help. I don't know. But, if you're going to go in there and rob something, and you end up with $540 and you destroy families, 4 families for sure. And, you left the sisters. I mean, this family lost 2 daughters that same night for $540. If this was all you were going to do was just go in and rob, I mean, you weren't that bright. How much does
No,
yogurt cost these days? you
what
know?
makes me, when I've seen this graphic right here, it makes me so sad knowing that Amy, she was already shot in the head when she
Yeah.
crawled away. They shot each girl execution style, and she was a survivor. She was a fighter. I wouldn't even say a survivor. She
Yeah.
fought because they had to, from what I understand, shoot her again. And one of the girls, I don't remember which one, was violently attacked physically. And but the fact that she fought a little bit, she was trying to get out, and it's fight or flight response at that point,
Right.
and she's just trying to survive. And it just breaks my heart that in that time these young girls were violently attacked, and that this happened to them at a place that they enjoyed. Like I remember I was listening to one of the mothers saying that, her daughter, this was their first job and they loved making their own money and spending their own
Yeah.
money. And, they were just going to go to a slumber party after this. And that's why they all were together. The other girls were there just to help them and go afterwards to a summer party. And what little girl, especially in the 90s, that was a big deal.
Right. Yeah.
Slumber parties, was so excited about that. And I was kind of going the backstory of the girls, and one of the girls, like you said, they were all in FFA, and they were all about their show animals, and one of them loved George Strait, like she had
Yeah.
George Strait posters. And these were just typical girls in the 90s, because like Garth Brooks and George Strait were real big back then, and it just broke my heart because back then was a country music boom.
Right.
And um I remember just now entering junior high in that age, and I just can't imagine as a parent of two little girls this happening, and they're just going to their job. And it's so sad because, like I said, that part of Austin where this occurred, every time I drive by, it just tugs at my heart, and I always see it like, oh, there's a yogurt shop, even though
Yeah.
it's something else now.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like it's almost a disservice or disrespectful to turn it into something. I feel like it should just be left alone, like an empty lot, an empty vacant.
I wonder if the people that rent it now, I wonder if they know what happened there.
I don't know. It just,
You'd
I
have
don't
to be living
know.
under a rock, I guess,
That might
to
be a
not
future
know.
episode for my show coming in the future
Yes.
to see if there's any weird stuff happening there. But like I'm very respectful of big stuff like that happening, and I feel like that
Yeah.
the owner of the building should have respected those girls' memory a little bit more than just saying, let's just make it something else.
I saw a plaque. I don't know where it sits though. I did see that they put a plaque somewhere, but it has
Oh,
the girls' names on it.
yeah, I'll look. I know that they have a bench in the cemetery here in Austin that just says "Our Girls," and
Really?
it just, I get emotional even speaking about it. It's just a place for the families to come together and their
Mhm.
friends, and remember those girls' memory, and
Yeah.
think about them. And man, it's this was like I said, something that Austin still talks about even to this day. Like you mentioned the yogurt shop murders, and everybody who's lived in Austin more than a heartbeat knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. Mhm.
Yeah.
As I drink my mimosa.
Right. Cheers, bottoms up, people. No, I don't know. I guess I'm sad about this case, usually about most any of them that I do, I always, think about the families and stuff that were affected by this. But, just to not have any resolution. And like you said, these mamas, okay, there's that plaque. These mamas are getting older, these dads, they want to know what happened. They probably would have been grandparents by now because these girls were just a few years older than me. Like I said, I was 10, the youngest was 13. So she was just 3 years older than me when all this happened.
I was
And
12.
so it's just I can't even imagine, I can't imagine how your parents felt, hearing about this and knowing that you were so close in age with these girls and the horrific murders that they met. Not only were they shot execution style, then they were raped, and then they were set on fire. And there's just so many things that go into this, and then to it not have a resolution, and then to be like, oh my gosh, we have a match, and then it's like just dangling, you're just dangling a carrot in front, and nothing, there's nothing that can be done about it. And yeah, you guys can see the interviews that the parents gave. I want to say it's KView,
There's
VUE. They did like a 3-part series when this
yeah.
originally happened. And so that's also on there too, so you guys can go look at it. But yeah, it's a truly sad case. And I don't, like I said, I mean, I don't know if they'll ever solve it at this rate, you know?
It's so
Um,
surreal to me when I see those nude broadcasts because we lived here for almost 20 years in Austin. And so when I see these things on YouTube and I'm like, oh, I remember watching this. And I watch that lady every night. She tells me the
yeah,
goings ons of the news. So it's so surreal to me how famous, when you're in it, you don't know how famous it is. But when I was doing the research and I saw it on like national news, worldwide news, Austin, yogurt shop murders. I'm like, man, this is bigger than I anticipated. I thought it was just a
right,
local thing.
right.
And then when I see how big it is, it just, wow, it's so
There's a and you
horrific.
know what's so crazy is for it to be so, isolated, like you said, it feels like it's so isolated, but there's several podcasts on it. There's several news stories. It's covered just about anywhere. Carrie is asking or saying, this makes me wonder if this case brought attention to after hours restaurant robberies and buttoning up safety procedures. You know what? I thought about that too, especially as far as for owners go, for these small businesses that do have the little teenage kids that are working for them and stuff like that, and maybe, and I don't know if in 91 they still had the labor laws, because these girls were 17 and they were working, till 11, maybe, depending on what time everybody got out of there and stuff like that. So, I also wondered that too. I didn't look it up, but I wondered about it. And Minnie's asking what year. This happened in 1991, December 6th, 1991 in Austin. But yeah, you wonder, there's so many what ifs, there's so many unknowns in this case, and it's heartbreaking.
And when you look at like the police and the fire department and the paramedics going in and just tampering with not tampering with evidence, but
Destroying.
messing up evidence unknowingly. You find out with a lot of these cases that looking back, you're like, why? Because I was never a police officer.
Right.
I worked in the criminal justice system, but I was never a police officer. And that's one of the first things that they teach you is, like protect the crime scene right away and don't let anybody in, and make sure anybody that went through it, you identify their shoes, their DNA,
Yeah.
everything, and where they went, and it's so sad to me that something very valuable could have been found. And the from what I understand, even the temperature of the fire, because it had gasoline, maybe it may have destroyed a lot of evidence. And then after that, the water going in destroyed some evidence. And that just makes me sad. So it just makes me like, one of those boys, whoever did this, thought, hey, if we don't do something, they're going to find out who we are. And
Yeah.
that one of those boys had a mentality of let's set this on fire to cover up,
Yeah.
and that
And
infuriates me.
I think about that too, and it's like, thankfully, in a bunch of these scenes that they don't do that, because,
Mm-hmm.
you imagine how many had if every crime scene was set on fire. And speaking of fire, I was watching this TikTok the other day, and there's this guy that's at the gasoline pump just pouring gas on his car, not inside the tank. He's pouring it all over. And I look over at Eric and I'm like, this guy has a body in here. He's about to set this sucker on fire. But I mean,
Um,
I don't know. I
you
don't
would
know
think
where
that.
we're at. I
You would
right?
think that. I He's just cleaning his car.
Yeah, there's something in, because why else are you doing that? Because you're fixing to destroy. But there are lots of things that are on the side of the road that are set on fire because they're trying to destroy evidence. There's been bodies that have been found,
Mhm. Yep.
burnt.
Girl, I'll tell you about one time. It was after Liberty was born, and we were taking her a babysitter here in Manor. And I kept seeing this truck on the side of the road, kind of in a field. There was a body in there. Somebody had murdered somebody just like 3 miles from my house, and it sat there. And I remember looking at this truck and kind of getting an uneasy feeling. And we talked about intuition. We talked about that gut feeling. And
Yeah.
and when it was discovered there was a body in that field, I looked at my husband like, I told you something was not right about that.
Right.
Nobody listens to me.
Right. I could have solved this 3 days ago.
I should have called the
Yeah,
police, but
right?
it looked like just like an abandoned car that wasn't running. But something I remember the door being open, and it was just I'll have to give that case to you because they identified the person but not who killed him. It's another cold case here in
Oh, is
Little
it
Gator, Texas.
another?
Hmm.
No way. Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
that is
It's
crazy.
crazy. I need to feed you cases from this area because it's since this crime, since the murder shop yogurt murders, crime has just I don't know what happened. It's like that was the catalyst for everything going wrong in me in
Well,
Austin.
okay, it's because I because I did read that too, and then I thought, you know what? They take advantage. I feel like they took advantage of the fact that, hey, they weren't able to solve this. They're not gonna, so I can get away. Literally, this is where the term came from. I can get away with murder in Austin, Texas,
Hmm.
because they don't have a good police force or anybody that was knowledgeable in that, you know. And
They
then
did.
or
Hmm.
if you murder, we're gonna parole you because of overcrowding, and then you can go out and do whatever you want, just willy-nilly.
And
Good
especially now in
morning,
Austin.
Jenny.
Hi, Jenny. I know that. Oh yeah, Jenny. Jenny is my neighbor, so she's
Hi,
probably like,
neighbor Jenny.
oh my gosh. There, in Austin, as it's kind of made national news where the mayor has defunded the police, so there's been an uptick of crime here in this area because there's no police, and police that are here in the department are leaving to go to other departments because they're not getting the support from the city. And so
Right.
this we don't go to Austin much at all because I just don't know. I don't know.
Well, I have a friend that lives in Austin, and he does this report, and he'll, like, show, like, the crime reports or whatever, and just the other day, right before New Year's, he was just walking down with a machete, wielding a machete, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is this what happens?"
It's insane. It's so Austin wasn't what it was when we first moved here. We moved down here because it still had that small town feel. It was the hip music capital city.
Right.
Everybody was like, "Keep Austin weird," and it wasn't dangerous. But it's just become something different now. And some
Yeah.
people are really attracted to big cities. Thankfully, we live in a suburb. But going to Austin, we have to like prepare ourselves. Like, okay,
Right.
we're
We have
going
to be
down.
carrying.
Yeah, we're going to 6th Street. What's our exit route? Like, what's don't go after dark, and it used to not be that way. 6th Street used to be a place where you would, I mean, when we first moved here, go down to the clubs and go bar hopping and hug everybody. At least I do when I'm intoxicated.
When I left.
Everybody's my friend. I love everybody, but it's not that way anymore. And I found that out a couple of years ago, and I was down there. I'm like, I need to go home.
Yeah. Um, this is funny. Carrie's like, "Hey, Jenny from Renee's blog." That's so funny. I love it. And Kelly says, "Stories like this are crazy because I think about all the times when I was younger and alone places and was just so vulnerable, so sad." And I grew up in the sticks, so I knew nothing about the city life or anything like that or anything that could have happened. And I don't know if y'all watched last week when I had Samantha on, and I had asked her, Samantha, what was the reason that you're a crime junkie? She said, my sister almost got kidnapped. And she blew my mind. I was like, what? So
No.
she had been a closet crime junkie because she was like, I don't understand how it is that why people do this. So yeah, and this was and I want to say it was back in the early 90s when it was her little sister almost got kidnapped. And her story was amazing because she goes on to tell that the little because they were all playing out in the front yard, broad daylight, they're out there playing, and the cousins grab sticks and rocks and start beating the guy. She runs in to call 911, and that's how they were able to save her sister. So watch that episode if y'all can. That was super intriguing to me. Morbid curiosity, not like in a good way, but yeah, that's how she became a crime junkie. So anyway,
Sandy,
there's
we
a
must
lot of
be stuck.
crap happening in the 90s.
Yeah, we must be sick in the head. We're like, ooh, what else
I
can
know.
you tell me?
Me too. I was like, did they ever catch him? I know. I was like,
Can you
no.
spill the tea?
I know. I'm like, can we talk more about this murder? I mean, this potential kidnapping. I know. That's how I am. Like, I'm telling you, she did not tell me this. Like, we kind of talked a little bit, kind of like you and I did before, and she didn't tell me this. So I was just like, you can just see my jaw drop, and I'm like, what?
I thought we were friends, and you
I
didn't.
thought we were friends, Samantha. But
That's funny.
anyway,
And I think maybe we should partner up. Like if there is a murder case that you cover, maybe I can cover the other end of the spectrum. If there's a
there's a
haunting
haunting.
from
Let's
that
do
case,
it.
that might be we may be able to tie that in and maybe collab in the future to be like, okay, here's what happened when they before they died, and here's how they're acting after after death.
Right. Here's how they're trying to tell you that
Mhm.
they were murdered. But anyway, okay, guys, we're gonna respect your hour. I'm gonna respect Renee's hour because she still has errands to do. Thank you so much, everybody that tuned in to watch this. Put it
Thank
in the
you.
if you on the replay. Let me know if you hit this on the replay. Renee, thank you so much. I appreciate you
Oh, you're
introducing me to
welcome.
this case. We'll definitely keep an eye on it, see if there's any updates. And if you hear any updates, let me know.
I will.
But anything else you want to say, Renee, before we go?
No, no.
No.
Bottom.
You're like, "I'm
Happy New
gonna keep
Year.
drinking." Happy New Year, everybody. You all take care. If you wanna be on the show, let me know. If you have any cases that you want to share with me, tell me because I'm always down for it. And like I said, watch The Search, watch, The Last Narc, because those are great. All right, everybody. Happy Saturday. Remember, let's keep talking sheep. Goodbye.
Bye.